Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of You Should Play. Today we'll be covering Bravely Default. Before we talk about the game though, I just want to thank Hero Voltzy for allowing me to use his footage of his Let's Play. Without him and this footage I would have not been able to make this video because I have no way to film anything on the 3DS and I don't think anyone wants to watch a video of me holding a camera up to it. So thanks again and check him out. A link for his channel will be in the description below. Bravely Default and its sequel Bravely Second are my favorite series to come out on the 3DS. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it in a previous video that I hate the 3DS. No one can convince me that this thing was designed to be held comfortably in a human's hands. After playing on a 3DS for 20 minutes, my right wrist feels like it's about to fucking fall off. I can't imagine playing anything that requires fast inputs and movement. I feel the same way about the Nintendo Switch when the Joy-Cons are attached to the screen, but at least you can play with a wireless Pro controller or just leave it docked like I always do. Bravely Default hits all the tick boxes to make me love its game instantly. It has a really nice art style, it has a great soundtrack, a really engaging story, and most importantly of all, a group of characters with a nice dynamic that play off each other well in a super charming way. I love the cast of this game, and I also really like the English dub of it. I know people are gonna be like, English dubs to a Japanese RPG, but I really enjoyed the cast they chose to pick to play these characters. Spike Spencer, the voice of Shinji Ikari, and even Galleon voices Ring a Bell. Cassandra Lee Morris, who played Morgana in Persona 5, voices Adia. Aaron Fitzgerald, the voice of Chie in Persona 4, is Agnes, and Bryce Papenbrook, who is Rin in Blue Exorcist, along with a million other things in the last few years, plays Tiz. Bryce has this really weird issue for me where I really like him as a voice actor, and I think he does a really good job with all the roles he gets. I just don't agree with some of the casting choices he gets. For example, I don't think he was a good fit to play Caesar in JoJo Part 2, but that's not really his fault, that's more the fault of the casting director. Same with when good actors have really stilted and awkward dialogue. Usually that's the fault of A, the director, B, the script itself, or C, the fact they're trying to fit a line into a very short time span when trying to match lip flaps for anime. Like, for example, there's a few lines in this game that come off weird and kind of stilted in a way, which I do want to blame the director for making them say it that way because these are all very talented actors, and it doesn't help that the speakers on the 3DS are fucking terrible, so it really sounds like they're talking like this sometimes. I guess just plug in headphones and hope for the best then. Originally, Bravely Default was supposed to be a sequel to Final Fantasy The Four Heroes of Light, but Square Enix decided they wanted to make this a new IP, but keep it somewhat related to the Final Fantasy universe, so you have items like the Phoenix Down and a lot of the naming conventions for the spells, along with a job system from games like Tactics Advance, Four Heroes of Light, just for some examples. My personal favorite job being the Red Mage, just because the design for all the characters is really cool. To give a brief explanation to the story, the world that Bravely Default takes place in is held in the balance by the four elemental crystals. Each crystal has a Vassal tied to them. Agnes is the Vassal of the Wind Crystal. Each of these crystals then becomes consumed by darkness, which in turn causes a giant chasm to open up under Tiz, another one of the main characters' farmland. Fixing Tiz's village is actually a small side part of the game, but it's one of those stupid gacha systems where it has the energy meters on cooldown for an X amount of time, so it's like, build the village, this takes 10 hours in real time, but you can buy the time to go down or buy more villagers to fix it so it will go faster. This was like during when Japan was trying to include those into console games and then they realized everyone fucking hated them. So luckily it's not intrusive in any way. I just ignored the whole fixing Tiz's village bullshit and played through the whole game without any problem at all. The way they implemented combat in this game is something that I absolutely adore, and the only downside to it is now I wish that every JRPG has this. You have the ability to turn down and up encounter rates depending on the area, so if you need to grind out some levels, just turn up encounter rates to times 200, walk around for 2 seconds, then fight enemies, along with being able to play out battles at times 16 speed. It feels like grinding is just a breeze, and it's not really as bad as it is in some other games. Once you have enough levels, you just turn your encounter rate down to 0%, you never run into a single enemy, and you just walk straight to the dungeon. Every JRPG should have this, because this makes it so I don't feel like I'm fucking wasting my time getting levels to get to the shit that I actually want, which is usually story and character interactions. Now let's talk about the Braving Default system that this game's named after. Braving allows characters to attack multiple times in a single turn, but the trade-off is that they're not allowed to attack for the following turns for how many braves they do. You're able to brave up to 4 times, so you'll be waiting for 4 turns before you can attack again. Defaulting is kind of like a guard for this game, where you don't do an attack, you take less damage if you're hit, but you're able to build up an attack point so you can brave the next turn and not have a penalty. Some of the late game moves you learn for some of the jobs require you to use multiple attack points, so defaulting before you do them is an easy way so you don't get penalized and are able to output a lot of damage with no drawbacks. Akihiko Yoshida's art in this game is phenomenal. I don't think he's really had any bad illustrations for any games he's touched. He for sure made the better box art from my favorite game of last year, Nier Automata. All the towns in this game have such vibrant and nice colors. I don't know how they do the rendering for these cities. It could be something like Dragon Ball or Guilty Gear, where it's a 3D modeled, but it has filters and renders to make it look like it's 2D, but it's really not. So these could probably be 3D models that they're walking on, but it looks like they're walking in drawings, and that's an aesthetic that I absolutely love. The art book for the game is also scheduled to come out in February of next year, so that's only like 4 months away from the time of this video being recorded, for $40, and I definitely plan to pick it up when it comes out. The soundtrack to this game is also excellent. It has one of my favorite battle themes. This game also does one of my favorite little aesthetic and story details that not many games do, is that as the story progresses, the main menu changes along with the story. I'm not going to say what it does in this game because it is a massive spoiler. The only other game I could think of recently that has done that is to again bring up Nier Automata. I wish more games did this because it allows to have some more creative imagery and make the experience more memorable as you play, but the only downside is, especially if it's on a handheld, most of the time I just put it in sleep mode and close it, so I don't fully turn it off and never really boot up again, so there is a chance that you miss it. Now, while this is a overall glowing review and recommendation, there is one massive downside, and I feel like I have to mention this and bring this up for anybody who plans to buy this game. But in doing so, it requires me to spoil a major plot point for the last third of the game. So I'm going to put my spoiler warning here for anybody who doesn't want to know what it is. Just be ready that the game has a bumpy last chapter. It's not nearly as bad if you are properly leveled or in some cases over leveled, so keep that in mind. Just jump to this timestamp, and in 3, 2, 1, now I'm talking about the spoilers. Okay, so the biggest flaw with this game is in the third act, the main cast gets caught in a time loop, requiring them to go and fight the 4 main bosses 4 times in order to reactivate the 4 elemental crystals. Yeah, it's kind of bad. This is where a lot of people just dropped the game because in order to get the true ending, you have to go through the 4 loops. But if you're properly leveled, it should be just a breeze. You just go back, fight the boss you've already fought, and just kill him and move on to the next one. And you just take the airship and fly to the next location. Like, I didn't feel nearly as bad, maybe because I was over leveled. Who knows, I'm pretty close to level cap now. But I didn't have any problem with it, but it is a striking issue. Luckily, Bravely Second, the sequel, doesn't have any issues like this. Well, technically, it can, but it's all about you paying attention to what's going on in the story so you don't have to fuck up and have to repeat a lot of your mistakes. I do think Bravely Second might be the superior game because they did improve on a lot of mechanics and they don't have the big issue that I just mentioned in the spoiler section. I definitely recommend playing both back to back because the story of the second game picks up right after where the first game leaves off. Also, there's a potential third game coming because after Octopath sold over 1 million copies, I believe in its first week, maybe 2 weeks, Silicon Studio tweeted out this tweet, which may be alluding to a third game or maybe an HD remake or a port for the Switch, along with Yoshida posting art of a Dia holding Joy-Cons, but that might have just been for Christmas and the Switch's release, and that could be completely unrelated, but I have some hopes. I would like to see it on the Switch and have the game be, you know, on a console that isn't 244p. And have some better speakers so you could actually enjoy the music in an uncompressed, garbly fashion. You also have to keep in mind how much of an impact this game had when it came out. The last Final Fantasy game we had when this was released was Lightning Returns, and we all remember how that game was, along with Final Fantasy XIV, not Realm Reborn, the original Final Fantasy XIV, the game that was so bad they had to completely redo it because no one fucking liked it, and the Realm Reborn literally opens up with the original Final Fantasy XIV getting vaporized. This is also when Square Enix was still trying to force themselves into the mobile market, like every other Japanese game company was trying to do, and some are still trying to do, even though they realize that it's very hit or miss, and unless you're making a gacha game that wants to steal all of your money, you're not gonna succeed, which most of them have figured out now, so everything is just a gacha game that comes out of Japan. Thanks, Fate Go. You fucking did this. I know this might be a little hyperbolic and people aren't probably going to agree with me, but I think Bravely Default was the start of the renaissance for the Square Enix JRPGs we're getting now, like Dragon's Quest XI, Octopath Traveler, and hopefully Kingdom Hearts 3. I know we have a release date for January, but until I'm playing it, I don't believe it's gonna exist. This has been a long time coming. I know you can get all the games in one place and on one console now, but I'm still somewhat into the mindset of seeing all the games on other consoles that I didn't own, like the PSP, the 3DS at the time, that I'm just like, oh man, when is Kingdom Hearts 3 gonna come out? And what are all these other games? Like I remember in middle school looking up Kingdom Hearts 3 and seeing 358 over 2 days' Keyblade War trailer and be like, wow, this looks awesome! And then seeing some really edgy FMVs with like Linkin Park and shit, as like every kid did back in the early 2000s. God, the fucking 2000 AMV phase was such a mess. If you made it this far, I just want to say thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode of You Should Play, and I hope if any of you do end up buying Bravely Default, you thoroughly enjoy it. If you notice my voice changed about halfway through this video, it's because I started getting sick, because seasons are changing in New York and it's getting fucking cold already. There's a few more games I have in mind for You Should Plays before the year ends, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make them or just include them in my end of year every game I played in 2018 podcast that I mentioned on Twitter that I'm doing. You could go see that list if you want to know what I'm going to cover. The list isn't updated because I played some more games since I made that post, but if you have any recommendations that I should play before the year ends so I could include that in that video, let me know. And as always, thank you guys for watching and see you next time.